the way Pep sort of handled the situation has been fascinating to see, because you've obviously seen him with his cuts and scratches and bruises on his head. You've seen him agitated on the touchline. That's nothing new. He's always agitated, win or lose, and he's always got that intensity. But the things like the six up to the Anfield crowd, you saw sort of Grealish emulating that a bit at the weekend by holding his three fingers up, indicating how many titles he had won. That feels like it's feeding in, and I suppose there's maybe a sense within the players that, okay, if you've got Pep Guardiola, the greatest manager certainly of his generation, maybe of all time, and even he can't fix it, wow, we really are in trouble. And sort of that feeds, as you say, negative cycle. When you say drastic measures, are you talking solely about squad overhaul? Is there any point this season where Pep Guardiola's position sort of starts coming under question from you?
For me, it doesn't until he has the tools. Like if he had a bunch of players, for example, I looked at Liverpool's midfield, and you've got Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, McAllister. They're all mid to early 20s. They're all young. They've all got legs and energy. And I look at City's, and it's Kovacic and Bernardo who are in the 30s, Gundogan, De Bruyne are in the 30s. It just doesn't feel fit for purpose for what you want. Like the league is more physical, there's more quality than ever. You've got Bournemouth signing players, from Porto, Barcelona, and Juventus this summer. There's such a high quality Premier League that you have to have that energy and that physicality, and City haven't got that. We just haven't got it. So I think until Guardiola is proven to not be able to do it with that kind of player, then I think you'd be crazy to let him go. He's won so much, but he does require quality footballers. He does, because the Premier League is better. And because it's the way he plays, it's the whole, you can't put Lewis Hamilton in a Skoda, expect him to win. Like he has to be in a great car to harness his talents. And I think Guardiola needs highly technical footballers, who are smart and who obviously can run, because that's what football in 2024, soon to be 25, demands. So I think Guardiola has earned the right by £1 billion by £1 billion, you could argue, given the money spent over the past 10 years. But he's earned the right to have another go, basically. And if he sign players, do the rebuild that's been overdue for a while, post treble, arguably, and then it still doesn't work, then yeah. But at this point, it feels silly not to, not to give him a chance to do that. And when I say drastic, I do mean overhaul. I'm listing midfield players there. And the links are people like Bruno Guimaraes or Zubimendi, people like that who are the right age, who are young, who are technical, who can run. City can't keep a centre-back fit right now, which points to issues. And Ake and Stones are both 30 plus. Stones is 30 going on 34 with his injuries. He doesn't feel like 30 doesn't feel old these days in modern football, but for some it is if they're injury prone. Kyle Walker he's not a Premier League level footballer anymore. And that sounds really dramatic, but given the quality of the Premier League again, his decline has been really, really aggressive, unfortunately. And I think it's because he leans so heavily on his physicality that's dipped, and his concentration has gone as a result. And I feel like he's just struggling. He's a very, very past it fullback, unfortunately. So you have to replace that, and then you can't play Erling Haaland every single week. We just do not have another striker, which is insane. It feels crazy to not have another striker. We sold Alvarez for 80 million and bought no one, and I think he wanted to lean on some midfielders and so on, but none of them are scoring goals right now. So that's not viable. And then we never signed an actual number 6. We sort of signed Phillips years ago. That failed for whatever reason. It just didn't seem to fit. Nunes was never a 6 anyway, and Guardiola clearly doesn't rate him. That was a panic buy after we tried to sign Bellingham, tried to sign Rice, then tried to sign Paqueta, and that fell through for obvious reasons. So basically, City sort of need to fix the mistakes that they've made over the past few years in terms of not plugging certain holes, getting midfield targets wrong, which you cannot get midfield targets wrong under Guardiola. That's a fundamental. If Guardiola's midfield is great, the team is great. It's that simple. Everything runs through that, the heart of that midfield, which is probably why if Rodri's here, he's probably still much better because he's a genius. So I don't think, Guardiola goes. I don't think you force him out. I think you just accept that the guy needs tools fit for purpose, because what he's got right now, unfortunately, there's only so much you can get from him, and he's pretty much done that.
Yeah, I think there'll be people sort of watching this and thinking he has got lots of tools. He's been there for nigh on a decade. He's had a lot of autonomy in that time to sign players and to bring in the players he wants. And, he's still got Erling Haaland, who until recently was rated by many as the best centre forward in the world.
I agree.
Phil Foden, who's, last season was incredible, Premier League player of the season. Obviously, Rodri's a big loss. I think he should have won Premier League player of the season last season personally, but obviously Ballon d'Or winner, he's a massive loss. No getting away from that. But yeah, I think the consensus is that it's gone beyond just we've lost Rodri, we're losing all these games now. It's gone beyond that. As you say, it's the whole team sort of feels completely devoid of confidence.
Yeah,
don't really they've lost belief in how they win games, which is unbelievable because they've won so much.
My biggest criticism of Pep, by the way, I'm sorry to tell that, Barney. It's just I don't mind him doing the small squad thing if he's willing to use the academy players every now and then. I'm not saying start them every week. I'm not saying start O'Reilly or McAtee or whatever. But Bernardo and Gundogan are clearly exhausted. 30 minutes. That's it. 30 minutes here and there just to give him a little bit of a rest, because you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot, because this is why we're getting so many injuries. These players have been ran into the ground every single week, and his logic is the senior players have got us into this. He wants them to get them out of it, so to speak. But they just can't run. They can't run. Guardiola said the other day that against Villa, at half-time, we changed how we played to, and I quote, pretty much exactly this quote, to adapt to the qualities of our captain, which was a reference to Kyle Walker coming on the pitch. And that is a very obvious and public admission that essentially Kyle Walker can't really do, or the team can't play with certain players in the team how Pep wants them to. If you're at that point, you're sort of admitting that some players just aren't good enough. They can't do it anymore, and you're compromising what you believe in at that point. So that's where I get frustrated. I would rather have a 19-year-old who can press, who can run, who can, probably has the hunger, by the way, that a 35-year-old Kyle Walker probably doesn't anymore. Because why would Kyle Walker at 35 or Gundogan at 34 have the same hunger as a 20-year-old who wants to make it? It's just human nature. Again, I got no problem with that. I don't expect them to be at their most thirsty, because they wouldn't be. So this is where you hear stuff like that, and as a fan, you sit there and go, well, why play him then? Like, if you can't do it, bring on the 19-year-old at right back who probably wants to be there, really, really wants it. So that is my main criticism. It's very minor one in the grand scheme of things. But if you want to have a small squad of 20 senior players, for one, I know that sounds like a lot, but it isn't, given the amount of football City play. They play more football than anyone because they've been the best side. They all have to be fit. They all have to be healthy. And they all have to be at their peak. And that's just not the case, unfortunately. As much as there's a lot of quality there, I think most people would admit that Savinho, Rico Lewis, Doku, they're not world-class players. They are potential. They're potential still. They're very good footballers with the potential. And I think most people would agree that Gundogan, De Bruyne, Kyle Walker, people like that, they're on the way down, I think so. Suddenly you've named six, you've named a third of the squad, but basically that aren't at their peak. And then you lean on these people, and then you can name about 3 or 4 of them are injury prone as well. Like Ake, Stones, Kovacic is another one. All our wingers have been injured. So I guess the point I'm making is the small squad thing works, and this is Pep's idea. Apparently, it works if everyone's flying, and you can bring off Gabriel Jesus off the bench, Mahrez off the bench, or Laporte or Cancelo a few years ago, because they're all mid to late 20s and they're all, they're all at their very best. But this isn't the City's makeup of the squad right now. There is quality there. I'm not going to tell you they're all terrible players. They're not. But it isn't. I've took a step back and looked at it. It isn't the same quality as a few years ago. It just isn't. There has actually been a bit of a drop off. So that's the issue. And my issue is that City or Pep haven't adapted to that, haven't seen it coming, because it felt really obvious from the outside looking in, that we're playing until August this year, because of the Club World Cup. There is no break anymore. You have to have a bigger squad. It's just a fact. You can't have, the squad limit is 25, and City always register about 20 senior players. And you're going to do that. Going back to the academy players' point, you've got to trust them. You have to trust them, because otherwise those players, especially the old tired players, this is what's going to happen, and it's happening in front of us right now.
And surely the sort of success of some notable former academy players, Rodgers being one at the weekend, Rodgers had a great game at the weekend. Cole Palmer being the most obvious, even going back to the likes of Jadon Sancho, bringing academy players in for half an hour here and there surely reduces the I'm sure City knew of their quality of those players they've let go and felt there wasn't a firm enough path through to be giving them as much first team football as they wanted. But giving the academy players minutes here and there will showcase their quality a bit more, will showcase that path to the first team, and maybe could have kept Palmer there for another season because he saw more of a potential to break into that first team.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw a lot of these players. I watched a lot of the academy. Morgan Rogers is gone to a level I didn't expect him, to be honest. Like, you couldn't really, you look at a good player, like a good academy player. Didn't expect to be this good, but he's just enjoyed senior football more than academy football. Cole Palmer, it was really obvious. I got the receipts, unfortunately. I really rated him. I thought he was going to be at least a Mahrez level player, you know, because when he played for the City's academy sides, he looked like a mini Mahrez. He just stayed in the right, skinned people, and put it in the top corner. He did it all the time, and that's frustrating. And they look at people like, you know, Romeo Lavia, for example, is another one where City had him, and he's a quality footballer. I know he's been injury prone, but I much would rather him at City where he's an actual six than, you know, having played other players there. The Lap, look, he did have a poor time on loan. I can't deny that. Like, but he was ours, you know, and that's the point. The City's job to notice that potential, and he did it first. You know, he's brilliant, set goal scoring records in the Premier League too for the under 23s, and he was brilliant. Then you look around, you got Harwood Bellis, who's an England international now. You know, once again, you know, someone that City rated really highly, had on the books for years, and he's playing for England, and he's staying fit, and he can pass the ball, and he's a really strong, hard-working defender. And there's loads of players around Europe. There's absolutely loads. Gittins at Dortmund is City lad, you know. Brahim Diaz is doing all right at Real Madrid now, you know. Mine's blank, but there's so many, basically. And you think some of these would be really useful in this squad right now. And Cole Palmer's the obvious, you know, the obvious one there. But look, essentially, going back to the small squad point again, if you're going to have a small squad, use the academy lads too. That's the point, surely.